What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Brian Costa, and we've got a great episode in store for you all today. Coming up in just a couple moments, we're going to be joined alongside by Celtics blogger and social media influencer Ian Inangelo. He'll give us his thoughts on the C's heading into the 2025-26 season, the return of Jason Tatum at some point this year, and a whole lot more. We actually had a chance as well to discuss some New England Patriots news with their recent win over the Tennessee Titans this past weekend, the rise of Drake Maye, and where the Pats are going to fit in the overall playoff picture. Before we get into the episode, though, I just want to say that if you're new to the channel or if you haven't had a chance to follow us yet, just make sure you go drop us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. We're also available on social media as well. Our Instagram is at down.to-the-wire, and our X, formerly Twitter, is at down_to-the-wire. So make sure you go give us a follow on there. We really appreciate all the support. And as well, another note is that if you haven't had a chance yet, we have a new show on this channel as well. It's called the Bryant Bulldog Sports Hour. Premieres live on 990 WBOB radio Mondays from 8 to 9 p.m., but you can watch the previous recordings of those shows on DTW platforms. So make sure you go give us a follow on there. Again, we really appreciate all the support. And it's really good content. You get a chance to listen to interviews with coaches, players, and all the latest with the black and gold. So we really appreciate all the support we have there, and we thank you so much for doing that. Now, without any further ado, let's jump into the episode. All right, we're joined alongside now by Celtics blogger Ian Inangelo. Ian, welcome back to the program. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you? It's been a minute.
I know, Ian. It's been, almost like 2 years or so since we've had you on the show. I'm glad to have you back on now. The Celtics season's just around the corner, and can't wait to, get your perspective on things as they go into a very interesting year this year. Obviously, you go back to last season, Jason Tatum goes down with that Achilles tear injury in the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, and then, you go to this offseason where Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Al Horford are out the door, and it's a new cast of characters in now alongside Jaylen Brown and Derek White. Just to start off the program, I know that you were able to go to some preseason games for the team, get to see how this team has been looking so far. One thing I know you saw was that Xavier Tillman game winner in the preseason finale. Just to kind of start off, give me your opening take on the team and your opening thoughts.
Yeah, so like I said, it's been, like you were just saying, it's been 2 years since the last time I've been here. 2 years ago, the Celtics won a championship. That team is no longer there. That team is no longer a thing that is, it's not going to be the same team. And obviously because of the Jason Tatum injury, but overall from a team standpoint, it's going to be very different, but at the same time, it's going to be very exciting. You're going to see a team more along the lines of kind of like the Isaiah Thomas years, where although it's going to be a little bit inverted, because in the Isaiah Thomas years, you had Isaiah Thomas basically dominating the offense and everybody else was playing defense around him. In this case, it might be a little bit of the opposite. It's going to be an offensive team. Like, this team is going to score the basketball between Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, even Anthony Simons. This team has a lot of scorers. It's just going to be a lot more question marks on the defensive end. And obviously, due to the departures of Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, that center position is going to be probably the biggest thing. But overall, watching the team, they look pretty solid, honestly. Like, they look like a team that can still be semi-competitive in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. I know that you were talking about some question marks on the floor for the Celtics, but kind of something that could potentially impact them on the floor right now is the state of Jaylen Brown. We saw him leave that preseason finale with what appeared to be a hamstring injury. I know that there have been some different reports on him since that transpired. Just from what you've kind of been able to hear, what are your thoughts on that injury right now, and what do you think about his availability for the start of this season?
Yeah, from everything I've seen, I've only really seen positive news about it. He appears to be day-to-day with that injury, so it doesn't look like it's going to be anything super serious that should have him out like long-term or anything, but you never know with a hamstring injury. Hamstring injuries are tricky, so you could maybe potentially see him miss the start of the season, like maybe the opener, maybe the first week of the season, but I really doubt that'll happen because they did say that he was practicing. Like, he basically did the full practice on Friday and just didn't play like the live game portion of the practice. So overall, that looks like an encouraging sign and he should be out there. But, we don't really know what's going to happen with a hamstring injury. But all hoping for the best, but he should be okay.
Yeah, hamstrings are such a tricky thing. I know, they're one of those injuries where it just can always like be something that lingers with you throughout your career or throughout a season. So I think the Celtics will probably be on the more, optimistic and try to wait it out with him. If there is any concern, I think that they're not going to send him out there unless they're absolutely 100% sure that he's ready to go. But with the Celtics this year, at least for a majority of the season, potentially all of it, we're going to see what it's going to look like when Jaylen Brown is that primary option on the team. When the offense is going to be rolling through him and Derek White, of course. But, we've seen Jaylen Brown at times where maybe Tatum's missed a game or two, where he's been the primary focal point of the offense and he's had some success. But that's been kind of in, playoff series like this recent one where Tatum went down and the Celtics had to adjust on the fly. And they were able to steal that game back in Boston before ultimately falling back in New York. For you this season, how do you think that, Brown is going to do being that primary scoring option for the C's?
I definitely think Jaylen Brown can thrive in this kind of situation. Over the last couple of years, like he has been talking about like being the number one option type of player, and this is now his chance to finally show that he can be that guy. And granted, the talent around him is a little bit different than it was last year or in years past when Tatum went down before, but in this kind of situation, this is going to be like his team. Like this is his responsibility to do most of the heavy lifting on scoring. And I personally think he can thrive in it. Granted, the ball handling is still sort of an issue, and that could lead to a ton of turnovers, which I'm hoping doesn't happen. But at the same time, I do have faith that Jaylen Brown can lead the Celtics team just due to the talent that he is. And I think you could sneakily see him make an all NBA team this season just because of, the fact that he could carry the Celtics team.
Well, I think it's the fact that you could see that because he'd be able to maybe carry the Celtics team, and it's just the lack of the talent that would be there in previous years. I think that when you had Drew Holiday, when you had Porzingis, when you had Horford, if you had taken the team that you had last year, gotten them all healthy again, and take out Jason Tatum, I think you're still potentially a top 5 team in the East. You are competing at a high level and able to, see where that team could go from there. But I think the question mark will just be where this team what this team's ceiling is this year. I've seen a lot of NBA writers and reporters kind of predicting the Celtics around the 7 to 10 seed range for this season. On your perspective, again, from your overall analysis of the team, where do you kind of foresee them being this season?
Yeah, overall, I still think they can be a top 6 seed in the East. I really do. I have little faith that the Eastern Conference is going to pose a huge threat this season. Not in a disrespectful way, but I think the obvious front runners, you have Cleveland, you have the Knicks, you have the Magic, you have the Pistons, and I think the Hawks. So I think those are probably going to end up being the top 5 teams in the Eastern Conference. And then I think the Celtics will be fighting for the 6th seed between like the Bucks, the 76ers, like those kind of level teams. And I still think the Celtics have a chance to be a top 6 seed. Now, granted, I might be higher on them than normal, but I think they could get to like 45 wins this year and they can still, make the playoffs and not have to deal with the play-in tournament. But, on the worst side of things, I would still be shocked if they don't at least make the play-in. Like they will be at least in the playoffs this year in some sort of fashion. I think worst case scenario.
I mean, I'd like to be hopeful on them, and I think that there's the case for it. I think this year is going to be the ultimate test for Joe Mazzulla and his group because, the past 2 years he came in, he was basically gifted that group that Ime Udoka took to the finals those seasons prior, and then the first year he came up short against the Heat. Next year was able to take it over the top, win a championship, and then last year ultimately fell short against the Knicks. And obviously you have a championship mixed into the middle there, but on both ends of it, you had teams that ended up losing to inferior talent. And this year, he's going to actually be the team that probably doesn't have as much talent around him. I'm just kind of concerned that I don't know if Joe Mazzulla is going to be able to make the kind of changes necessary to get this team to get this team to play up to their ability. I think that, over the couple years that he's been here, he's been able to benefit from a lot of the talent that's been around him. I know that, even if Tatum goes down, like he was like, oh, which he did, you have, Brown, you have White, you have Porzingis, you have Horford, that those guys that you could really rely on and, be a, juggernaut of an offense. Now that you don't have that, I mean, I think there's a lot of concern as to what Mazzulla and what his style of offense can really do with lesser talent. How do you feel about, Mazzulla going into this season?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of question marks there. So I do think Joe Mazzulla, as like from a coaching perspective, like, being able to help develop these guys, I think can work, because they've shown that they've been able to take guys with lesser talent and turn them into legitimate NBA players. Like Luke Cornett, for example, he just got a huge contract with the San Antonio Spurs. Sam Hauser's turned into a guy. Peyton Pritchard just won Sixth Man of the Year last year. So their development of players, I feel like, can lead to success in the regular season when it comes down to it. But like you said, there is a lot of question marks. You don't have Jason Tatum there. Jason Tatum is one of those players that he's going to get the ball with like 5 seconds left in the shot clock, and he's going to make something happen, because that's just how good he is. You don't have that kind of guy right now, even though, you have talented players in Jaylen Brown and Derek White, but, that guy's not there. And they definitely have changed their coaching philosophy. It feels like they definitely want to do more of a high-paced offense, running up and down the floor, gambling for steals and stuff like that, which, if it's right, it's going to look awesome. If it's wrong, it's not going to look good. It's not going to look good. But, it's going to be a high risk, high reward kind of type of play that I think the Celtics are going to be running. And, you're going to see your ups and downs with it, but you could also see guys like, we saw Josh Minot. He was super impressive in the preseason. Luka Garza is going to get a chance to, maybe become an NBA player. Chris Boucher is going to get a bigger role. So, you could see those guys who came in as kind of question marks maybe develop into a guy that you could rely on, closer to the end of the season, if Jason Tatum comes back and you're still, kind of fighting for a playoff spot.
Sure. I think that, you mentioned some of those new players that are going to be a part of this team. I think, when you looked at this offseason, one of the major players that, in additions that got brought in that people had their eyes on, was Anthony Simons from the Portland Trailblazers as a part of that Drew Holiday trade. I think that kind of the knock on Simons was, a lot of his scoring, people maybe just attributed to the, Trailblazers being awful and that he was just chucking up a bunch of shots. And that was kind of maybe people's really kind of only downside on him, really, is that he was just a high volume scorer because the Trailblazers lacked that kind of talent. I think that he brings a lot of, good intangible skills with the ability to shoot the ball, create his own shot, do those sorts of things. How do you feel that he's going to be in this kind of role?
I definitely think that he should be in the 6-man role. Like, I personally think he could win like 6-man of the year type of thing. Like, that's the kind of role I think he should play on this team. I don't think he's going to end up being a starter, just with the way that they played him in the preseason and everything. So either way, I think he'll be fine. But, I do feel like Anthony Simons is one of those players where it's like, he could be crazy on offense on any given night. However, there's also the chance where he's going to give up that same amount of points on the defensive end. And that kind of goes back to the development, where it's like, can the Celtics turn him into even, maybe not even like
Competent defender?
Exactly. Like, as long as he can be out there and not be a negative on defense, if he can at least, just be out there and I'm not, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but if he can try, granted, in Portland, they were a defensive identity team, but they weren't a good team. So it was kind of not much incentive to really try on defense. But with the Celtics, you need to play defense if you're going to be on the team. So I personally think that Simons, it's what you're going to get on offense. He's an electric scorer. He can shoot the basketball. The Celtics have like an insane group of shooters that not many other NBA teams have. And Anthony Simons being added into that is absolutely insane. So what you're going to get on the offensive end. It's just everything else around it. If he can develop into more of a well-rounded player, I think the Celtics really got something good with him. But it's just going to be like every other thing with this season. It's a wait and see kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing with the Celtics, like they, like you had mentioned with their 3-point shooting, they broke records last year. They were one of the, all-time 3-point shooting teams, they, most ever in basically NBA history. It's unreal what they were able to do just this past season. But I think at the end of the day, that shooting philosophy and that style of offense probably ended up costing them at least that series against the New York Knicks. They shot themselves out of multiple games in that series, and really that ended up costing them, regardless of the Jason Tatum injury. And I think that, it's something that's going to be on the mind of a lot of Celtics fans this season is, will the Celtics be able to adapt and learn from that strategy and maybe dial it back a bit or adjust it and maybe have it be a little bit more in moderation? Where do you feel that this, identity of this team is going to be? Do you think it's still going to be as 3-point heavy as it was, or do you think that there's going to be a little bit of a difference in that offense?
I'm not going to lie, Brian. With watching the preseason, I don't think there's going to be much difference, if I'm being really honest with you. I think they're still going to be really 3-point heavy. And, I think it's also going to play back into like the style of the game that they want to play. Like they want to be a fast team. They want to get up and down the floor as fast as possible. So I think you're going to see a different style of 3-point shot, but you're going to see the same volume. Like you're going to see a lot of, in my opinion, you're probably going to see a lot of early shot clock, coming down off a rebound and a pull up three by Simons or Pritchard or, Jaylen Brown or Derek White, whoever. Like you're going to see a ton of those this season, I feel like, just because that's the way that they want to play. They want to get up and down the floor. They want to, put as much pressure on the opponent as possible. And they had a game. I think their first preseason game against Memphis, they shot like another insane amount of threes. And for the Celtics at this point, it's not really an insane amount. It's basically just what they do.
It's an average night, yeah.
Exactly. That's just what their offense is at this point. And I don't think their 3-point philosophy is necessarily going to change. And bringing in a guy like Simons, who shoots threes most primarily, that's probably one of the best parts of his game. I don't really see the volume of threes really slowing down.
Yeah. Does that kind of concern you then? I mean, I think that, obviously if, it's successful, then, and which it was in 2024, that won them a championship. But then when you look back to last year, I think it ultimately ended up, maybe a championship wouldn't have been in the cards with the Tatum injury, but I think it at least costed you that series against the Knicks. In your mind, does that concern you, the fact that maybe Missoula or Brad Stevens and, all that basketball operations group is either unable to or unwilling to make that kind of an adjustment? Does that concern you?
A little bit. It's definitely something in the back of my mind when I watch the Celtics at this point. But also I feel like I can't make an accurate assumption of that kind of thing without Jason Tatum, because we know Jason Tatum basically runs the show on the court when he's out there. So you might see a night where they don't take a lot of threes. You're going to see a lot of off-ball cutting from the corners type of thing where, Hugo Gonzalez or Josh Minot are going to be streaking in from the corner, and you're going to see a lot of backdoor cuts kind of thing. Like that could also be an offense. Like we say, it's going to have to be a wait and see type of thing with that kind of philosophy on what they're going to end up doing. But from the New York series, I would hope, because I've seen them before, adapt and try to change their style to make them a better team overall. So, like, I have all the faith in the world that Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla definitely watched that New York series and said, hey, we love the 3-point and we're still going to shoot it, but we definitely have to have other options available. Because I remember during that series, all they would say is, oh, we need, a backup plan. We need this, we need that. But I don't think they ever actually had it. I think they were just saying it. Obviously, on the court, it showed they didn't really have it. So I think they've definitely gone this offseason trying to find, other ways to play. And I definitely think that there's a chance that we can see that throughout the season, just depending on the night that they're having when it comes to shooting the ball.
Sure. You mentioned, we're not going to really have an idea maybe what this team's identity or, what their, game plan philosophy will really be until Tatum's back on the floor. We've been seeing a lot of clips of Tatum this offseason with an accelerated recovery. He's already dunking again. He's back on the floor at the practice facilities. when I'd kind of talked about concern about the play style is, obviously it's great to see Tatum's, doing well in this recovery thing, but I think the one thing I'll say is that there's usually timetables for recovery because that's usually the proven track record from doctors. And yeah, guys can come back sooner. Sometimes maybe guys have setbacks, but usually there's a good timetable for when people recover. And I think that, you're hearing all these Celtics fans that are being optimistic, saying maybe Tatum's going to defy the odds and have, the fastest comeback ever. And that's all great. But I think that there's still needs to be some realism here and maybe needs to be a reality check as to saying that, you can be as optimistic as you want and you can want him back on the floor, but I don't think it's smart to necessarily have him come back to this injury unless he's absolutely 100%. I don't think you need to put anything out there because if he, God forbid, aggravates something trying to come back early this year, I think that, you throw another season, potentially now 2 out the window. And, all for what? Just to have him out on the floor, potentially trying to compete for the Celtics to be maybe a 4 seed in the East instead of a 6 seed. In terms of your opinion, what has been your thoughts on, these clips from Tatum, this accelerated recovery? Just give me your overall take on this.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I absolutely love to see that, he's dunking, he's doing basketball activities. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous coming off of a torn Achilles not even like 5 or 6 months ago. Like, we saw that injury. We knew that he was going to be out for a long time, but the fact that he's already on the court is absolutely ridiculous and makes you, it makes you happy and it makes you hopeful that he's going to come back and be okay. Like, some people have had that injury and it killed their careers, but he might be able to come back and say, hey, we might be okay, which is great. He's in the prime of his career, all of that. I also agree with you on the fact that I would really like him to be 100% healthy before he steps back on the court again. And I think the Celtics and Jason Tatum have definitely had those conversations as well, because he has not ruled out the fact that he's not playing this season. Like, the Pacers ruled out Halliburton, the Trailblazers ruled out Damian Lillard. Like, those are also players that had Achilles injuries that have already said that they're not playing this year. But with Tatum, I know that he wants to be on the court more than anybody. Like, we have seen in the past, he's the most durable player in NBA history. He missed 17 games over the course of his entire career so far. Something like crazy. It's some crazy stat like that. Like, he has not missed a whole lot of even regular season games. He's missed 1 career playoff game. Like, that kind of stuff is absolutely ridiculous. His drive and love for the game is awesome. But I think the Celtics are definitely going to try their best to slow him down, as not necessarily slow him down, but, keep him focused on the fact that you need to be 110% healthy before stepping back on the court again. And if you're not that this season, I think that's perfectly fine. Like, yeah. Best case scenario, he doesn't play at all this season and he's 100% healthy going into next year. And I'm fine with that. It just depends on, what he thinks and what the Celtics think. And if he is making a miraculous recovery and it does happen to be faster than normal, then that's even better. Like, he's 100% healthy. He's ready to go. That's okay. I think Kevin Durant came back in 9 months or so. There's been a couple guys this season who, Drew Smith, I think, tore his Achilles early in the season last year, and he already played in the preseason this year type of thing. So, there might just be a smaller timetable of an Achilles injury than we've seen in the past, just due to the new, medical technology and stuff like that. And, like we said, if he's 110% healthy and the Celtics are happy with him, he's going to play. And I think that's all we need to worry about.
Yeah, and let me just say this. I'm not hating on Jason Tatum or the recovery process or anything. I commend him for really trying to get back on the court. I think he's a warrior out there for the Celtics. I love everything he brings to the table. But, I think that, you mentioned Kevin Durant. He ended up sitting out the entire 2019-2020 season. And maybe had COVID not been a factor, maybe he would have gotten back in there if the bubble hadn't been a thing and they had a normal schedule, something like that. Who knows? But evidently that didn't happen. And I think with Tatum, I would love to see him out there selfishly. Yeah, it'd be great to see Jason Tatum make that kind of a recovery. But I think for the state of the Celtics' longevity, you don't need it right now. I think that necessarily, if they had it, I'll say this, if they had brought back all the players they had and they were gunning for that championship like they were 2 years ago, and it was like, hey, we just need Tatum to get back and we'll have him on a minutes restriction, we'll get him out there, it'll be great and it'll be fine, like that's one thing. But I don't think this team necessarily is vying for a championship this year. That's my overall take with it. And if that's the case, then why are you trying to rush him back, other than maybe just trying to get him out there, like feel it out for a game or two, and then that's kind of it? Like, other than that, there's really no reason to do it. And like you said, he hasn't been declared out for the season like Halliburton or Lillard, but I wouldn't be opposed if the Celtics came out tomorrow and just said like, hey, like he's done for the year. Like don't even think about him. We're going to put him on the shelf. Like he's going to get 100% healthy and he'll be back there for 26, 27. Like I'd be just fine with that. But
definitely, I agree with that. I think it's just a matter of him, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I think he said that he already had a date in his mind of when he wanted to come back, and it's obviously going to depend on if the Celtics are in a playoff position or not. Like if they're Jason Tatum away from making a top 6 seed in the East, I feel like he's going to come back, type of thing. But if they're like the 9th seed, 10th seed, they're kind of hanging on, but there's other injuries and the team just hasn't been playing well, and he comes back. Like he'll come back, but he's not going to really, make the difference that really matters. And I think it's obviously just going to be a touch and feel kind of thing, but it's all going to be, what the Celtics have. And obviously the Celtics probably think just like we are, where it's like we can't risk another injury, on top of this one. So they're definitely going to do everything they can.
No, totally. And I think that I think the Celtics will be smart with that. I don't think that they're just going to rush him back for the sake of getting out there. Maybe if this was, 15, 20 years ago, that might be the mentality of it, even with the medicine not being as great. But I don't think that they're going to rush him back any sooner than he needs to be. But like you had said, if there's the chance, maybe, it gets later in the year and they're, in one of those later seeds and, they decide not to bring him back, I think that, would probably be the wise decision not to, risk anything like that. When you talk about, the potential for injuries, things like that later in the year, obviously we're seeing Jaylen Brown now with this hamstring, questionable injury right now. Guys can get banged up. And I think one of the, teams that in playoff runs that I'll always kind of think of is when you think of those Warriors runs of the mid to late 2010s, they went to like 5 straight, finals, and it was deep postseason run after deep postseason run. And they were playing a lot of basketball. And you had maybe Team USA stuff in there for, Curry and Durant and, all those kind of things that were mixed in there. And eventually you saw those players break down. Curry ended up missing an entire season at one point. Durant had the Achilles tear. Klay Thompson had the ACL tear and then the Achilles tear after it. And it's just a lot of basketball that's being played. And Tatum is in a very similar position where he was a part of those Team USA teams and was really just playing at a high level for, probably what was way too much on his plate. And eventually he burned out and his Achilles popped. For you, when you kind of look at this team with the Celtics, if something, minor, but could keep maybe, keep like a Jaylen Brown or a Derek White out for a significant amount of time, do you shut them down for the year? If it's if they get an injury right now and it's like, they're out for 3 to 4 months, do you kind of just call it on the season with them and just say, we're not going to risk anything with them right now? Or do you try to get them back out there and competing? And I'm not one for tanking, but if that's the case where, say, Tatum's out for the year, and then, if it's like, all right, Jaylen Brown's going to miss 3 to 4 months, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. But if that's the case, do you just say, all right, Jaylen, we're going to sit you down. We're going to just try to get for a high lottery pick. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, just knowing the mentality of this team, although, like you say, like, tanking, I wouldn't necessarily ever say tanking is the way to go, but I watched AJ DeBanza play the other day, and he looked pretty good. Like, yeah. He would look pretty good for the Celtics right now.
Bring him back home.
I mean, I'm not one to say tanking is the move, but I would love to see him on the Celtics. But
yeah.
But that's the thing, though. It's just kind of like what we talked about with Tatum's mentality. Like, this team is a team that they're a champ. They have championship pedigree.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown's won a championship with them. Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, they were all on that team that won a championship. And obviously you want to be precautionary. And I think this season with no Tatum, they have a chance to be extra precautionary than they would in years past, maybe. Like, there have been years where Kristaps Porzingis got hurt. They might have rushed him back early. Drew Holiday gets hurt. You rush him back early a little bit. Jaylen Brown, I mean, he got hurt. I think he got hurt late into last season or late into the 2023 season.
Sure, yeah.
And he was back for the playoffs type of thing. Like in a season where you're competing for a championship, that kind of thing can happen, but you have the leeway this year with no Tatum to kind of, give guys a little extra rest, maybe give them 1 or 2 more days off than you wouldn't have had last year type of thing. So I definitely think that's in play. And I don't think they would never say they're tanking. But if it's, halfway through the season, trade deadline comes around, they're not looking good, team's not playing well, although a turnaround is possible, maybe you trade off some guys. You trade off Luka Garza if he's having a good year, Chris Boucher, even Simons if they want to get super deep under the tax. So I definitely think that is something that can happen this season.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not a fan of tanking. I think that, the teams that do it ultimately, that will cost them at the end of the day, and like that, the basketball gods might have their way with that. But I think that, a good example to look at would be the Golden State Warriors. They went to the bottom of the league. They got, when Curry was hurt, and they just said, we're not even going to try it this year. And then they come back out of that and they win a championship in 22. So they were able to really adjust from that kind of a thing. And I think that helped prolong their run and, being competitive in their conference. Obviously, they weren't the dominant title favorites that they were every single year, but I'm seeing some polls that still maybe have the Warriors as a top, 3-4 seed in the West. So it's like they still have that kind of ability to, prolong that kind of thing. And I think that might be a smart kind of idea for the Celtics to follow. Again, I don't like them going in the tank and just, saying we're going to throw this season out the window and forget about everything. But if you need to, I don't necessarily hate it.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, they would never say they're tanking, but you would see signs. Like, it's that meme where it's like, if I won the lottery, I would never tell you, but you would see signs.
Yeah.
It would be that kind of thing with the Celtics, in my opinion, because they've won way too much, like with this core of players, to like just flat out say you're not going to win games. Like that's just not going to happen. There's too many dogs on this team to let that happen. But you would see the signs if it was there.
No, I was about to say if Brown or if White got like a sore knee around like February, and maybe it would be the only type of injury that would only keep him out like a month or so, I could see the Celtics just saying we're going to shut it down. In that kind of a thing where it's like if they're not really competing at the level they want to be at, they might just say we're all good. Like if they're around that 7 to 8 seed, they might just say, even a 9 or, lower than that, they might just say, we're just going to pull the plug on it and just see what we can do in the draft. I could definitely see that being on the table for them this year. When you look at the rest of the East, it's really interesting. Like you had mentioned, you talked about the Magic, you talked about the Knicks, the Cavs. Who do you think that, with the Celtics being out of the picture right now, at least as terms of, conference favorites, whose conference do you think this will kind of be at the moment? Because the Pacers were able to take it last year and go to the finals. And obviously with Halliburton being out, he's going to be out of the picture. And now a lot of people are looking at maybe the New York Knicks to take that next step. Do you think that it's their conference to lose? Who do you think that is going to be really the favorite coming out of the East this year?
Personally, I think it'll be Cleveland. I like what Cleveland did in the offseason. I kind of thought there was a chance they could blow it up due to the fact that they lost to the Pacers, but they dealt with injuries, so you can always kind of excuse that. But they brought in Lonzo Ball, and I think he's going to be really beneficial for them coming off the bench, and if Darius Garland gets injured, because that normally happens too. But I definitely think it's the Cavs Eastern Conference to lose. I definitely think the Knicks are good. I like the Knicks. Mike Brown is going to be 10 times better as a head coach offensively than Tom Thibodeau was. My only problem with the Knicks, though, is I don't know if I don't know if Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns are still going to be the guys that can really lead the Knicks to a championship, especially because of all of the good teams out west. I I think the only team in the East that has a chance to beat a team out West, say you end up running into the Nuggets or the Thunder, I think the only team that really has a legitimate shot at competing is the Cavaliers. I think they're the team to beat in the Eastern Conference right now. Knicks are going to be a close second, and then you kind of just have a mixed bag from there. But there's a lot of teams that could make the leap, like the Magic and the Pistons. I really like with the Hawks with getting Kristaps Porzingis if he's healthy. But yeah, there's a lot of mixed bags, but I definitely think that the Cavs and the Knicks are definitely a tier above the rest of the teams in the East right now.
Sure thing. All right, well, Ian, this episode is coming out on Celtics opening night against the 76ers. Give me your thoughts on just, how this game's going to go and, what we're going to probably see tonight.
Granted that Jaylen Brown plays, we don't know if Jaylen Brown's going to play right now, but say Jaylen Brown plays, say Joel Embiid plays, Paul George was already ruled out for that game on opening night. I think Tyrese Maxey will play, VJ Edgecombe, all the rest of the Sixers. Sixers have an interesting team. The Sixers are another one of those question mark type of teams that have a chance, if they're all healthy, can be really good. We don't know if that's going to ever happen because we have almost never seen it happen. But it's going to be a fun night. Celtics Sixers is always going to be a battle, no matter really who's playing. And no Jason Tatum gives the Sixers a slight chance to win, but Celtics opening night in TD Garden, I'm never going to count out the Celtics. I think the Celtics are going to win this game tonight.
Nice. Love to hear it. Hopefully they can get it done. Ian, before we go, we were actually recording this on a Sunday right now. The Patriots just wrapped up their game against the Tennessee Titans in Mike Vrabel's revenge game. I think that, it'd only be fitting since it's on a Sunday that we touch on that a little bit before we let you go. I know that you were, had a chance to, maybe, see some highlights from the game since it's been over. Just give me some of your thoughts on the Patriots right now, that win, and, what you got to see today.
I don't know, man. The Patriots, it kind of does astonish me. And if I was a fan of any other team in the NFL, I'd probably be pissed. The Patriots were able to basically take 5 years off and still make a playoff run in between those 5 years, but still find another franchise quarterback in between Tom Brady and now Drake Maye. And I think Drake Maye is about as legit as they come. He's top 5 quarterback in the league right now, in my opinion. Like, he's that good of a player. I mean, 21 of 22 completions. He had like 280 something total yards.
All-purpose yards, yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous. Like, you don't see those things happen often, all of the time. And definitely going through what he went through last year had thrown him in the fire enough to really prepare him for basically anything that could happen. And I think Drake Maye is legit. And with the way the Patriots are playing, I really think they're going to be one of those teams in the playoffs you don't want to face. Even if they win the division, you don't want to go into Foxborough. You don't want to face a guy like Drake Maye in the way that they've been playing right now. Defense is definitely a little up in the air sometimes, depending on, like who they're playing or what's happening. But I don't know. I definitely 100% trust Drake Maye, and I think they found the guy, and Mike Vrabel they've definitely found the guy at head coach too. And I think that's going to be a pairing that dominates the AFC for years to come, I hope.
No, and listen, I agree with you on a lot of that. I think that it's interesting to see the development of Drake Maye happen in real time, because I think when you looked at last season during the Gerard Mayo era, and then when you looked at even the first game of this year against the Vegas Raiders, and even that Steelers game, there were definitely some question marks as to what this team was going to potentially be and what Maye's future was going to look like. And I had some concerns about Drake Maye coming out of UNC. I was really concerned, and frankly, I was not a fan of the Patriots when they had drafted him. I thought that he had the upside to be a great quarterback, but something that I necessarily didn't like about his tape from UNC was that he kind of got a little too cavalier or kind of cowboy and hero ball kind of stuff, where he was able to, his throws of, he can complete throws to all 3 levels. Like, he's great in that area. That's not where I had a problem. But when I was watching some of his highlight tape, like, a lot of it was that, he's getting dragged down and is still trying to throw the ball out, or, he's scrambling towards the end zone and is throwing a ball left-handed. And it's awesome to see. It's a cool, tape. My concern was, how is that going to translate to the NFL? And I think that that first season, it was definitely kind of rough. And I think that we've even seen some plays this season where you kind of like grit your teeth and you're like, oh my God, like, please make this happen. And, I remember at some of the little plays where it's worked, like in the Saints game where he completed that like kind of flip dump off pass to the running back, or when he was going out of bounds and he was able to just toss it out left-handed to get the incompletion instead of the sack. Like, those little plays are, fun to watch. It's like, it makes it easy, like, and it's something else he can have in his bag. My concern was going to be when he's facing real pressure, real coverage, like, is he just going to try to make a play, or is he going to know when to just get down, take a sack, and learn from that? And I think luckily he is able to he has learned, and he's a little bit better with that than I thought he would have been. I thought he would have been a bit more skittish, would have been, trying to play too much hero ball, but he's actually been really good at that. And just seeing these past couple games against the Saints, the Titans, and obviously that game against the Bills, where it was really kind of his coming out party, he has been unreal. He's, been able to create plays outside the pocket. I still think about that pass down the sideline with him rolling to his right up in Buffalo. Like, he's been making incredible plays. And, we saw another one today with him dropping it in the bucket to Kayshon Boutte. Like, dude, incredible stuff.
Dots. He had some dots today. Even, like, I remember that throw to Mac Hollins in the first quarter. That was a dot down the sidelines. That dot to Austin Hooper for the first touchdown was insane, where he lost I can't remember who the defender on Tennessee was, but like, he makes some ridiculous throws that I have not seen from a quarterback in a long time. Like, obviously Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, they do ridiculous stuff like that all the time. But as a Patriots fan, and Tom Brady, he did that stuff on occasion, but it never felt like the extent that Drake Maye can do it. Like, in that Saints game, it felt like he was air raiding the field every single time down the field because the Saints had nobody to stop him. Like, and granted, outside of Stephon Diggs, who has been absolutely incredible this season, he still doesn't have a great receiving kind of core. Hunter Henry has been a reliable tight end like he always is. Pop Douglas, he's been off and on sometimes. Kayshon Boutte has emerged, which has been awesome. But still, if you look at other teams around the league, like the Patriots, core as a whole is still, he has, doesn't have as much talent as every other roster, but Drake Maye is making it look like, a more elite team than they maybe are.
Well, Ian, and that's the thing that great quarterbacks do, is that Drake Maye probably doesn't have the type of receiving core that maybe some of these other teams might have, but his talent is helping elevate these guys. When you looked at Kayshon Boutte over his first couple of years in the league, he looked like he was not an NFL player. Or if he was probably at a bottom of your roster kind of guy. He's now having kind of a similar role to, it's funny with Stephon Diggs now in the Patriots. It's kind of similar to what Gabe Davis was when with the Buffalo Bills, where, everyone's thinking about Stephon Diggs, but then Josh Allen finds Gabe Davis for a big play down the field. Or, he's kind of that guy that could take the top off the defense, and Diggs is making those plays underneath. That's kind of almost like what Boutte's becoming for the Patriots now. And it's really awesome to see that they're finding a role for him. Kyle Williams, like, he's kind of a different case at this point. I don't know what he's able to really bring, but Boutte's really shined. Pop Douglas has really been able to come along in these past couple of weeks there. I know were some questions around what his chemistry was going to maybe kind of be with Drake Maye, and there were some struggles with that early on in the year, but we saw that Saints game where he really should have had two big touchdowns. One got called back on that bogus pass interference call, and then today he had that awesome back shoulder play, the one-handed grab on 4th and 1, just an unbelievable grab there. So it's really fun to watch right now. And I think that when you look at the Patriots right now, they have, I think it's been ranked, it's one of the weakest remaining schedules by strength of schedule on the year. And, for the Patriots, a lot of people could say, like, that's unfair. And yeah, it probably is unfair, like, based on what Drake Maye is able to do right now. But, you're coming off back-to-back 4-win seasons. The stakes have never been lower. Like, there's low morale. And, when you look at the upcoming opponents of the Cleveland Browns, the Atlanta Falcons, who have been better as of late, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who will be a legit test, but after that, it's the Jets, it's the Bengals that, may or may not have Joe Burrow by that time, it's the Giants, the Bills will be probably a solid test again, but Then you have the Ravens, who may or may not have Lamar Jackson back, the Jets, the Dolphins, and that's the end of your regular season. I think that there's definitely a case to be made that this team has double-digit win potential. Maybe the division could be in play based on the fact that you beat Buffalo once. For you, what do you think your expectations would be now as a Patriots fan with this team going forward?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just making the playoffs at this point is probably the level of expectation we can really have. And like you said, although you can't really blame the Patriots for the schedule because
No.
they were bad, bad last season. And, having a last place, finish last year is going to get you somewhat of an easier schedule. And granted, they're playing what is it, the NFC? Is that the South? NFC South? Is that what it is? The Panthers, the Falcons.
Yeah, that
Bucks.
is the NFC South. Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, you're playing the Saints, you're playing the Panthers. That's not necessarily their fault. That's just the way the schedule kind of worked out. And, it could not have been a better, maybe as good of a, thing if they did have a harder schedule. But we even saw in the beginning of this year, it still took time for the Patriots to turn into what they've turned into the last few weeks. And that could also be on account of getting Mike Vrabel and his new coaching staff and just getting comfortable with it. But, at this point, I think just making the playoffs and, if you win a playoff game, say you play a team like the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs, that would be fun. As long as you're a competitive football team, it doesn't take much, to be the talk of New England and, have New England fans rallying behind you again. Like we saw in 2021, they had zero expectations and then they made the playoffs. And just how much it kind of took over the city. And I definitely think this team is better than that 2021 Patriots team for sure. And they do have a chance to at least win a playoff game. But my expectations are at this point, just make the playoffs and just, maybe be 11-12 win team.
Sure. And listen, I think that this team definitely is and at least has more talent than that 21 team. Just based on the fact that you have a legitimate player at quarterback. And listen, Mac Jones is having a ton of success right now with the San Francisco 49ers. I wish him the best of luck there. I think that he was dealt a bad hand in New England and things maybe didn't end the way that him and the team would have wanted it to. But I think that when you look at Mac Jones, I don't necessarily think that he's the type of player that even when he was having his great season in 2021 here, he's not the type of player that I think you're really game planning for and being like, oh, we have to play Mac Jones next week. Drake Maye is the type of player where you're like, oh, we have to go against him. We have to go against Lamar Jackson, the Josh Allens of the world. He's that marquee kind of name. Mac Jones really didn't bring that kind of level to the Patriots, even when he was having that kind of success. You could kind of tell that he was a product of that McDaniels offense. Drake Maye, while he's in this McDaniels offense, is rising above it and doing things that, just the average quarterback in that offense wouldn't do. Those deep balls, aren't just happening in a normal Josh McDaniels offense. Drake Maye is creating and letting those plays happen. And then he's doing it with his legs as well, getting 60 yards today on the ground. He's been remarkable in that role. So I think my one concern with him, Ian, is just going to be his health because like I told you, he has that cowboy kind of mentality. He's going to try to play hero ball. He's going to move around, try to run for first downs. And, we saw it in this game. He got taken out and was evaluated in the medical tent. Luckily, he was able to come back into that game. But, he has to be a little bit more careful on the field right now. He has to be, sliding more often. He can't be just trying to run to contact and, just willing to fight for that extra yard. I appreciate it. It's something that's really admirable of him. But for a Patriots fan, you need him to be, your priority. You can't let him get hurt in these games.
Oh, 100%. And, this is still his second season, in the NFL. This is still a sophomore year. I think with time, he'll definitely, have a better gauge on, maybe when to go for that extra yard or maybe just, come up sliding. And I think that just comes with more time. I mean, what is this? His 18th career start or something like that over the course of the last two seasons. So I think that's all going to come with time. And if we think Drake Maye is as good as he's been playing and as good as, everything looks to be, if he's going to be this elite quarterback, that kind of thing's going to happen. Lamar Jackson eventually figured it out. Josh Allen eventually would figure it out. Mahomes eventually figured it out. It's going to happen. He's I think he'll be fine with that. Honestly, I think it's just a matter of experience with that kind of thing.
Sure. And I think that, like I think the expectations for him are, sky's the limit with him. And, we'll have to see what the Patriots can do because listen, I don't think this is a perfect Patriots team. I think that there are definitely some flaws on this roster, especially like that defense that you mentioned. They've started out slow in a lot of these games. They let, Cam Ward and the Titans drive right down the field on, on their first two possessions. And then, the Patriots had to claw back and tie the game. Evidently, like, they were able to pull away, make some mistakes, and, the Titans really fell apart. But I think that they still have to learn from, this and try to get better at starting off games early. They're able to settle in and, once they were settled, like they were great. Chase who was creating pressure. Milton Williams had a big sack, there in the game. And then you had Marcus Jones with the, interception off the tip drill. But there still is room for improvement with this defense, and starting, having good starts is going to be a priority for them.
No, definitely. That is the only thing that does kind of make me a little bit skeptical. And granted, that's also because they basically have a new defensive coordinator. Like,
yeah,
Terrell Williams was supposed to be the guy to come in and kind of, bolster the defense and make it this elite unit, but he's, not here, and I hope his health is okay. But I'm not gonna lie to you, I can't even tell you who that new guy is. Like, I don't remember his name.
Zach Core.
Zach Core. Like, yeah, like this is still like his basically first time being a defensive coordinator. So it's gonna take time with the defense, and I'm hoping that they can eventually round into like more of a consistent kind of form. But if you're letting guys like Spencer Rattler and Cam Ward kind of, even Spencer Rattler looked pretty good. Like, he looked like a really good quarterback against the Patriots. Like, he had some insane plays, but the insane plays are going to happen. But as long as you can limit them and at least make the correct play when the time is needed, I think the Patriots will be fine, especially on the defense team, because they have way too much talent. Christian Gonzalez, Marcus Jones is having a crazy season. Chase Harold Landry, Milton Williams, like all these guys, they just have way too much talent to like not figure it out, in my opinion, kind of thing.
No, yeah. And I agree with you on that, is that they have game changers on this offense. Like, like you had talked about Chase Williams, the secondary of Gonzalez, Davis, and Jack and Marcus Jones, not Jack Jones, but of that group. Like, it's a very talented unit, and you hope that they can, figure it out and be good for this next stretch. I just want them to, get that consistency early and start games off on a better note. And they'll have a good test against it next week with Cleveland. I think this will be a good, kind of, again, soft opening. The Browns have been in disarray with their quarterbacks situation with Shedeur Sanders and him trying to be the backup, and Dylan Gabriel in that whole situation. So I think, we're going to have to see how that all transpires, but it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But Ian, I know we talked about expectations for this team, and I think that, yes, making the playoffs is going to be that step this year, especially, with the improvement we saw. I think at the beginning of the year, it might have just been, just getting to, doubling your win count might have been just, the reasonable expectation for the year. We're past that at this point. It's now going to be about making the playoffs with this group and the talent that you have. So I think that's there. But the thing I'll say about this is, I'm not one that's going to be like, oh, the Patriots are going to the Super Bowl, we're back, like, let's go. Like, it's like we're all the way back. I'm not necessarily one of those people. I know people that are all the way back, and they're just like, the dynasty's back on. Here we go. We just took a brief intermission, but, here we go again. Like, Vrabel's going to, like, take us to the promised land. Like, I'm not that. But I will say, when you look at the scope of the AFC this year, there's not a ton of teams that really stand out to you and make you go, like, that's going to be a tough competition. Listen, like, when you look back to 2021, yeah, we beat the Bills, but we beat them in that win game. And then they came to Foxborough and they blew our doors off. So I think that, like this win against the Bills actually meant a lot more, because it was our quarterback actually outdueling Josh Allen and going up there and proving that they can beat them in their building. That was a much more impactful win that we saw. When you look at the Ravens, who are missing Lamar Jackson right now, they're 1-5. When you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, who are starting to find their footing a little bit more, but they started off the year slow, and they definitely aren't as talented as they have been in past years. And then when you look at the Indianapolis Colts, who, yes, are having a fantastic year, but Daniel Jones is the quarterback right now. You kind of wonder if he's just going to become kind of what Sam Darnold was last year, and come playoff
Yeah.
time maybe falls apart. Like I think when you look at the AFC, it's pretty open. Like it's not like what it would have been maybe a couple years ago where you had these juggernauts and you were kind of stuck behind them. There's definitely the talent for the Patriots to at least win a round and maybe two. Like who knows?
Yeah, and that's why I think like I said earlier, they're just a team you don't want to face. I feel like, they're going to be coming off of a somewhat easy schedule, going into potentially a first round bye if it even gets to that kind of point with how easy their schedule is. Like, I think the only team that legitimately poses a threat to the Patriots is probably the Chiefs. Like if you end up drawing the Chiefs somehow, and I don't think they'd play the Chiefs in the first round, but if you end up drawing the Chiefs at some point, I think that's a game that, I think most Patriots fans will say there's a realistic shot we're going to lose that game. And, if they did, it wouldn't be a disappointment because it's Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. You saw with Tom Brady how crazy, when Tom Brady's playing somebody in the playoffs, it doesn't matter how much of a good story or juggernaut you were, there's a good chance you're going to end up losing. Unless you have somebody who's as equal or better than him on the other side. So we can't necessarily say Drake Maye is Patrick Mahomes level right now going into his first playoffs, but I think just as long as Drake Maye isn't the reason you lose the playoff game. Like if you lose a playoff game and Drake Maye has a really bad game, it's not going to look great, for you with a long off season going forward. But if Drake Maye does, well, and granted you can't really necessarily take the first playoff game, a guy ever plays as, the reason to be high on him or not. But if he plays well and you win your first playoff game, I mean, what's stopping you from believing you could beat anybody?
Sure. Yeah. And no, and I think that's something that, like you said, like you don't want to judge someone off their first playoff appearance, but I think that it would be a legitimate test for him just based on the fact that, is he going to be someone more of, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, or is he going to be maybe in the ranks of a Justin Herbert, who when they get to the playoffs, they fall apart and they have those bad games that you're talking about. So I don't necessarily want to put that all on Drake Maye's plate in year two, but I think that would be something to, keep stock in and take a look at. But I think when you look at this Patriots team, yeah, like I don't think that they necessarily have the kind of talent for a deep playoff push. But again, when you just look at the talent in the AFC, it's very barren. And like, yeah, even though we beat the Bills this year, I don't know if I want to face them in that building again in, January. I think that's going to be a tough matchup. I think you probably lose that game just based on the playoff experience that Josh Allen has. Kansas City, I think it's probably going to be something very similar. Even if, they're not at the peak of their powers, it's the type of thing where it's just like,
they're still the Chiefs. Like,
yeah,
it's
that it's that old school thing of like, like the Patriots, they still have Brady and Belichick. You never know what's going to happen. And they ran that thing basically until the wheels fell off in 2019. Like that thing kept going. So like, even though, yeah, like the Chiefs started off this year and they were, really bad and they didn't look like they had it. At the end of the day, you still got Andy Reid, you still got Patrick Mahomes. And if you had to face them in a playoff round, I'm probably taking the Chiefs in that game, just all things considered. So that's my take on it. I think that the Patriots have looked really great as of late. I'm excited for what the future of this franchise looks like. And, I'm actually excited for it for the first time in a long time because I think for, both of our sakes, like it was a pretty atrocious past couple of years, like some long games of watching them and really not knowing what the direction of this franchise is going to look like. It's good to see that there actually seems to be a sense of progress now. There is some development and some improvement. So I'm excited to see what's to come of it.
Definitely. I agree. Same exact thing. I think it's just, enjoy the ride because, it's going to be one of those seasons where it's like, there's not going to be a whole lot of, bad vibes, I don't think, unless some big drama expose comes out at some point during the season. Honestly, I think it's just one of those enjoy the ride type of things. Maybe you make a run like the Commanders did last year and you end up in the championship game somehow, facing off against the Chiefs in Arrowhead type of thing. Like, maybe that just happens and you end up, maybe making a Super Bowl. Who knows? But
yeah,
I'm not going to say they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they're going to make the Super Bowl. I can say and do all those in videos for fun type of thing after a regular season game, but it's just going to be a fun ride. And I'm just going to enjoy it for as long as it goes.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think at this point, that's kind of the thing where it's like, you got nothing to lose. You might as well just see what this team can do this year, go all in with them. And it's going to be a fun ride. I think that, again, with having a legit, QB1 on your roster and having that at your disposal, it's going to be exciting to see what happens going forward. But Ian, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the episode today. It was great having you.
Of course, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Before we go, do you just want to shout out anything for yourself? I know you're doing a lot of blogging and writing with Celtics Talk Weekly. I know you have your own channels. I'll let you go ahead and promote those for yourself.
Yeah, so just at Ian Inangelo on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, doing stuff there, doing stuff for Celtics blog under SB Nation, and all that stuff.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Ian, we really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Hey, you too. Have a good one.
We are now officially down to the wire, which means that we're going to wrap up the show here. But before you go, if you want to follow Down to the Wire, follow us on Instagram at down.tothewire or on our YouTube channel where you can watch the video recording of this. And if you want to watch this on streaming, we're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. Thank you so much. Have a great day and peace out.